He was brilliant, intelligent, admired by millions. A young man who dreamed about the stars, who loved physics, who once wished to become an astronaut, and who rose from an ordinary family to become one of India's most admired actors. Millions saw confidence in his smile. Millions saw success in his life. But behind that fame, behind that admired public image, was there a hidden psychological delicacy silently growing inside his mind? How does a person surrounded by success, wealth, admiration, and limitless opportunities collapse into darkness at just 34? Was it only depression? Was it emotional isolation? Or were there deeper psychological patterns hidden beneath the surface long before the world noticed? Tonight, we are not discussing rumors. We are not discussing conspiracy theories. Instead, we are asking a difficult question. Can a person's name silently reflect emotional struggles, psychological vulnerability, and even the direction of life itself? In this video, we will analyze the name of Sushant Singh Rajput using the psychological number interpretation system explained in my books. And as we move through his mental, karmic, and destiny vibrations, you may begin to notice a deeply unusual connection between the structure of a name and the real events of a human life. Hello, this is M.G. Sudarsanan, numerologist and name analyst. For more than 30 years, I have studied the hidden psychological and destiny patterns connected with names. Today, we will explore a unique analytical system that attempts to understand personality, emotional structure, life struggles, and destiny patterns using only the name. No horoscope, no birth chart, no astrology. To understand this system clearly, we will analyze the life of Sushant Singh Rajput, a brilliant actor, a sensitive mind, and a personality whose tragic ending shocked millions. Now, let us begin with the mental number of Sushant Singh Rajput. First, write the complete official name carefully. Then, as shown in the calculation, count the total number of letters and their vibrational values. In this system, the mental number is calculated from the official name by which a person becomes widely known. And here, one important principle must be understood. The more widely a name is spoken, remembered, admired, and emotionally carried by millions of minds, the stronger its influence becomes upon the individual. And in the case of Sushant Singh Rajput, this was a name recognized far beyond an ordinary social circle. Now, let us observe the mental vibration hidden inside this name. As shown in the calculation, the mental number arrives at 18, which further reduces to root number 9. Now let us compare what my book explains about number 18 with the visible life of Sushant Singh Rajput. On the positive side, number 18 often creates individuals driven by ambition, self-improvement, achievement, recognition, and strong determination. These individuals usually possess imagination, intelligence, emotional depth, and the ability to rise quickly through talent and effort. And when we observe Sushant's life, this becomes immediately visible. From an ordinary background, he rose within a short time to become one of India's most admired young actors. His intelligence, emotional expressiveness, ambition, and determination strongly reflect the positive side of this mental vibration. But according to the interpretation in my book, number 18 also carries a psychological warning. The same number that creates ambition may also create hidden inner battles. It warns of emotional struggle, mental pressure, misunderstandings, betrayal, disappointment, and psychological burden. Very importantly, these struggles may remain invisible to the outside world. The person may continue smiling, working, and appearing mentally strong, while silently carrying emotional exhaustion within. And when we compare this interpretation with the later phase of Sushant Singh Rajput's life, the psychological resemblance becomes difficult to ignore. Now, let us move to the karmic level of Sushant Singh Rajput. For this calculation, we assign the numerical values to each letter exactly as shown in the chart on page 12 of my book. Then, as shown in the calculation, we add the values under each segment of the name separately, and finally combine them to obtain the karmic number. In this analytical system, the karmic vibration represents the active, visible side of life. It reflects how a person expresses themselves through behavior, career, daily activities, relationships, communication, and public life. As shown in the calculation, the first karmic vibration of Sushant Singh Rajput arrives at number 66. And according to my analytical system, number 66 carries the same influence as number 57. The interpretation explains, number 57 indicates a pleasant disposition and sociable qualities. It brings material success through persistent application and hard work. And when we compare this with the visible personality of Sushant Singh Rajput, the resemblance becomes immediately clear. Whenever people saw him, they saw a smiling face, pleasant behavior, warm communication, friendliness, confidence, and a positive public image. Even during his struggling years, he continued moving forward through persistence, discipline, and hard work. From television to cinema to becoming one of the country's admired young actors, his rise strongly reflects the material success and sociable qualities described under this karmic vibration. Now, when 66 is reduced, it arrives at number 12. And according to the interpretation explained in my book, number 12 is known as the sacrifice. This number is associated with emotional burden, mental suffering, anxiety, self-sacrifice, and situations where a person may silently suffer because of emotional involvement with others. Importantly, the interpretation warns that hardships under this number may not always arise because of the individual's own mistakes. Instead, the person may become emotionally burdened, misunderstood, emotionally affected, or drawn into difficult situations through attachment, loyalty, or the influence of people around them. And when we compare this interpretation with the visible events of Sushant Singh Rajput's life, the resemblance becomes emotionally striking. Even during the height of success, there were repeated discussions surrounding emotional pressure, relationship complications, mental struggles, psychological stress, and emotional exhaustion. The interpretation of number 12 also mentions a quiet inner withdrawal. It explains that while appearing normal before society, the individual may silently lose emotional strength from within. And in Sushant's case, this becomes psychologically important. Because despite fame, talent, wealth, and admiration, many later described signs of emotional isolation, mental fatigue, withdrawal, and hidden inner suffering. The interpretation further warns that such individuals may sometimes struggle to protect their own emotional well-being. As a result, peace of mind, emotional balance, or personal stability may gradually begin slipping away. And when we compare this written interpretation with the later emotional struggles discussed in Sushant Singh Rajput's life, the karmic connection becomes difficult to ignore. Now, when number 12 is reduced, it finally arrives at root number 3. In this system, the root number represents the deeper karmic foundation influencing a person's ambitions, career, actions, and worldly journey. According to the interpretation explained in my book, number 3, governed by Jupiter, is strongly connected with ambition, growth, discipline, leadership, knowledge, and the desire to rise toward greater achievements. And when we observe Sushant Singh Rajput's journey, this influence becomes remarkably visible. Even during engineering studies, his mind was already reaching toward much bigger dreams. He was deeply interested in science, astrophysics, space, aviation, creative arts, and intellectual exploration. This constant desire to grow beyond ordinary limits strongly reflects the expansive nature of number 3. The interpretation also explains that number 3 individuals often possess discipline, responsibility, and unusual dedication toward work. And throughout his career, Sushant repeatedly demonstrated this quality. Whether in television, cinema, dance, physical preparation for film roles, or intellectual interests beyond acting, he showed unusual commitment and a strong desire for self-improvement. The interpretation further explains that number 3 individuals are often drawn toward higher learning, science, philosophy, and intellectual pursuits. And again, this closely matches Sushant's personality. Even after becoming a successful actor, he remained known for his curiosity toward science, space, books, astronomy, and intellectual discussion. But the interpretation also gives an important warning. Highly ambitious and intellectually driven individuals may struggle deeply when emotional peace or mental freedom begins collapsing around them. And in Sushant Singh Rajput's journey, extraordinary success often appeared alongside emotional pressure, career stress, public scrutiny, and personal struggles. When we compare these interpretations with his real life, the karmic pattern becomes increasingly difficult to dismiss. Now, after understanding the mental and karmic structure of his life, let us move to the third level in my system of name analysis, the destiny level. As shown in the calculation, when we add the mental number 18 with the first karmic number 66, the total arrives at number 84. Now let us carefully observe what the interpretation in my book says about number 84. The interpretation explains that this number often creates individuals with a generous and supportive nature, especially in practical matters, emotional support, financial help, or concern for others. And when we observe the public life of Sushant Singh Rajput, this quality becomes clearly visible. Despite celebrity status, many people described him as humble, kind-hearted, soft-spoken, supportive, and emotionally approachable. And interestingly, we can also see real-life examples of this generous tendency. In January 2020, Sushant founded a non-profit organization called Front India for World Foundation, with the aim of helping address poverty, hunger, malnutrition, healthcare, and sanitation. Even before that, during the Kerala floods, he reportedly donated financial support to the Chief Minister's Relief Fund on behalf of one of his fans. And despite his growing fame, he continued to be recognized among India's leading personalities, appearing again in the Forbes Top 100 celebrity list. When we compare these actions with the interpretation of number 84, the quality of generosity and emotional concern becomes surprisingly consistent. However, the interpretation also gives an important psychological warning. It explains that emotionally generous individuals may sometimes struggle to fully understand the intentions or emotional behavior of people around them. And psychologically, this becomes important. Because people who are generous in trust and attachment may sometimes become vulnerable to emotional misunderstandings, disappointments, pressure, or emotionally complicated situations. And when we compare this interpretation with the later visible experiences of Sushant Singh Rajput, the resemblance again becomes difficult to ignore. Now, let us move further into the destiny structure. As shown in the calculation, when we add the mental number 18 with the second karmic number 12, the total arrives at number 30. According to the interpretation explained in my book, number 30 is a deeply mental and psychological vibration. It strongly influences the inner world of the individual, pulling the mind toward reflection, memories, inner analysis, past experiences, and emotional contemplation. The interpretation explains that people influenced by number 30 often revisit their achievements, emotional moments, successes, mistakes, and disappointments repeatedly within the mind. And when we observe the personality of Sushant Singh Rajput, this becomes meaningful. He was not merely a film celebrity focused only on fame. He was widely known as a thoughtful, intellectually curious, deeply reflective person. Even after success, his interests repeatedly moved toward science, space, astrophysics, philosophy, learning, and self-development. But the interpretation of number 30 also gives an important psychological insight. It explains that after reaching certain achievements, such individuals may gradually begin losing emotional attachment toward material success or worldly competition. And importantly, this withdrawal often begins quietly from within the mind itself. And when we compare this interpretation with the later discussions surrounding Sushant Singh Rajput's emotional condition, the similarities become difficult to ignore. Despite fame, wealth, recognition, and admiration, there were increasing signs of emotional withdrawal, mental exhaustion, introspection, and psychological burden during the later phase of his life. The interpretation further explains that strong ambition is often necessary for number 30 individuals to remain fully engaged with worldly success. Otherwise, the mind may slowly drift toward emotional detachment or quiet inner renunciation. And psychologically, this becomes an important pattern to observe. Now, before arriving at the final destiny vibration, let us observe the root mental force hidden inside the name. As shown in the calculation, 18 reduces to root number 9. According to the interpretation explained in my book, number 9, governed by Mars, represents courage, fighting spirit, strong will, independence, emotional intensity, and determination. The interpretation explains that number 9 individuals are fighters. Even when life begins with hardship, they often rise through courage, persistence, and determination. And when we observe Sushant Singh Rajput's life, this influence becomes immediately visible. From a middle-class background in Bihar, he gradually fought his way upward. He left engineering, entered dance and theater, moved into television, and eventually rose into mainstream cinema through effort and determination. The interpretation also explains that number 9 individuals strongly value independence. And psychologically, this becomes important, because highly independent minds often suffer deeply when they begin feeling emotionally trapped, mentally pressured, misunderstood, or internally disturbed. The interpretation further warns that number 9 individuals may experience emotional conflicts, criticism, rivalry, or intense pressure during important phases of life. And when we compare this with Sushant Singh Rajput's later years, the similarities again become difficult to ignore. Public controversy, emotional complications, psychological strain, media scrutiny, and emotional turbulence increasingly surrounded the final phase of his life. Externally, people saw confidence, discipline, success, and intelligence. But internally, there may have existed emotional battles invisible to the outside world. Now, when the root mental number 9 combines with the root karmic number 3, the final destiny vibration once again arrives at number 12. And here, the influence of number 12 appears in one of its strongest forms. According to the interpretation explained in my book, number 12, the sacrifice, represents emotional suffering, mental burden, anxiety, psychological exhaustion, and situations where individuals may slowly become overwhelmed through emotional involvement or surrounding circumstances. Importantly, the interpretation explains that these hardships may not arise because of wrongdoing by the individual. Instead, the person may gradually become emotionally burdened, misunderstood, emotionally used, or psychologically affected through loyalty, emotional attachment, or the complicated behavior of people around them. And when we compare this interpretation with the final years of Sushant Singh Rajput's life, the resemblance becomes emotionally difficult to ignore. Despite fame, wealth, intelligence, and admiration, his later years increasingly became surrounded by emotional strain, relationship complications, mental struggles, public scrutiny, and emotional isolation. The interpretation also warns of a quiet inner renunciation. Even while appearing successful externally, the individual may slowly begin withdrawing emotionally from worldly life. And when we compare this written interpretation with the emotional struggles repeatedly discussed during the final phase of Sushant Singh Rajput's life, the recurring pattern becomes deeply thought-provoking. This is exactly why, in my analytical system, the repeated appearance of number 12 across multiple levels must always be treated seriously. Because when the same emotional pattern repeats again and again, its influence may gradually begin shaping the direction of a person's life. Now, let us continue the analysis through the personal name, Sushant. Because while the full official name reflects the broader structure of life, the personal name often reveals a more intimate psychological layer, the inner self by which a person is emotionally experienced in private life. As shown in the calculation, the mental vibration of the personal name Sushant arrives at number 7. According to the interpretation explained in my book, number 7 gradually turns the mind inward. It is associated with introspection, emotional withdrawal, philosophical thinking, deep imagination, inner contemplation, and in difficult emotional conditions, a gradual detachment from worldly involvement. This number often creates individuals who appear thoughtful, intellectually curious, different from others, and deeply engaged with inner questions about life. And when we observe Sushant Singh Rajput, this influence becomes remarkably visible. He was not merely an actor, he was deeply interested in science, space, astrophysics, learning, philosophy, and ideas far beyond ordinary celebrity life. But the interpretation of number 7 also carries a psychological warning. When emotional strain becomes severe, the mind may gradually move toward withdrawal, loneliness, emotional detachment, or quiet renunciation. And in the tragic final phase of Sushant's life, this influence becomes deeply sensitive to observe. Because the final act of his life happened privately, not in public, not in the middle of professional success, but within his own personal space. Psychologically, it was as though the inward-moving mental vibration of number 7 had withdrawn completely from the outer world. But now, let us observe the karmic vibration of the personal name Sushant. As shown in the calculation, the karmic number arrives at 27. And according to the interpretation explained in my book, number 27 is symbolized as the scepter of authority and harvest. This number is considered highly favorable and intellectually powerful. It represents intelligence, creativity, initiative, original thinking, self-confidence, and recognition gained through one's own ideas and abilities. And when we compare this interpretation with the visible personality of Sushant Singh Rajput, the resemblance becomes immediately clear. Among family, friends, colleagues, and millions of admirers, he was widely recognized as an unusually intelligent, thoughtful, and intellectually curious personality. His fascination with science, space, technology, philosophy, learning, and creativity gave him the image of a mind constantly searching for deeper understanding. The interpretation of number 27 also explains that success often comes through independent effort rather than dependence upon others. And again, this strongly reflects Sushant's journey. From theater to television to cinema, his rise was built largely through discipline, originality, learning, and persistence. But the influence of number 27 becomes even more convincing when we observe the direction of his later ambitions. Unlike many celebrities focused only on films and fame, Sushant increasingly moved toward intellectual creation, entrepreneurship, and innovation. He co-founded Insay Ventures, an initiative connected with emerging technologies, intellectual property, and original ideas. He also became involved in entrepreneurship promotion, social causes, and ambitious creative projects extending far beyond cinema. And this strongly reflects what number 27 promises: achievement through intelligence, originality, creative power, and independent thinking. Yet here, one of the most emotionally striking contrasts quietly appears. Because while the mental vibration 7 may have gradually drawn the mind inward, the karmic vibration 27 continued projecting intelligence, creativity, brilliance, and success before the world. Now, let us move to the first destiny vibration of the personal name Sushant. As shown in the calculation, when the mental number 7 combines with the karmic number 27, the total arrives at number 34. According to the interpretation explained in my book, the meanings of number 25 and number 7 must also be understood together with number 34. This number represents wisdom gained through experience, inner strength, and success earned after struggles, disappointments, and repeated effort. The interpretation explains that such individuals usually do not rise easily. Instead, life teaches them through real experiences, setbacks, observation, and persistence. And when we compare this interpretation with Sushant Singh Rajput's early journey, the resemblance becomes clear. His life did not begin with privilege. He experienced emotional hardship early, including the painful loss of his mother. He left engineering, moved through uncertainty, struggled in dance, theater, and television, before eventually building success through discipline and self-effort. The interpretation of number 25 also explains that strong number 7 influences often bring movement away from the birthplace, travel, life changes, and unfamiliar environments. And again, this appears clearly. From Patna to Delhi to Mumbai, his journey continued through change, ambition, and larger dreams. But here, one deeply unsettling question quietly emerges. Was it merely coincidence that Sushant Singh Rajput's life ended at the age of 34? Or does the repeated appearance of the same numerical series deserve closer reflection? Because in this analysis, the personal destiny vibration first arrives at 34. Later, the final destiny vibration arrives at 16. And when reduced, 16 once again returns to root number 7. In other words, 34, 16, and 7 all repeatedly belong to the same numerical series appearing within the structure of the name. And according to the interpretation explained in my book, this series repeatedly points toward introspection, withdrawal, psychological struggle, unexpected disruption, and emotionally difficult turning points. Now, let us observe the final destiny vibration formed in the personal name Sushant. As shown in the calculation, when the rooted mental number 7 combines with the rooted karmic number 9, the final destiny vibration arrives at number 16. According to the interpretation explained in my book, number 16 is symbolized as the shattered citadel. Its symbolism describes a tower struck suddenly, with a crowned figure falling from a height. The interpretation warns of unexpected disruption, psychological collapse, shattered expectations, or sudden emotional turning points capable of deeply affecting life. Importantly, the interpretation does not say tragedy is unavoidable. Instead, it serves as a warning that emotional awareness, caution, and psychological support become especially important when this vibration grows strong. And when we carefully compare this interpretation with the final phase of Sushant Singh Rajput's life, the resemblance becomes emotionally difficult to ignore. At one stage, he stood among the most admired young actors of his generation. People expected an extraordinary future. His ambitions stretched far beyond cinema, toward science, technology, space, innovation, and creative exploration. Yet, during the final phase of life, public discussions increasingly surrounded emotional struggle, mental distress, withdrawal, psychological burden, and emotional exhaustion. And this becomes especially thought-provoking when we remember the repeated appearance of the 7 series, 34, 16, and Root 7, all repeatedly pointing toward inward struggle, detachment, and psychological vulnerability. So the question this analytical system asks is not, did a number force destiny, but rather, can repeated psychological tendencies hidden inside a name quietly influence how a person thinks, struggles, withdraws, or responds to emotional suffering long before the world notices? And when the same patterns repeat again and again through the mental, karmic, destiny, and personal structure of a name, the possibility becomes increasingly difficult to dismiss without reflection. As we conclude this analysis of Sushant Singh Rajput, one quiet question remains. How much of a human being remains hidden beneath the surface long before the world notices their struggles? If this analysis has made you curious about the hidden influence of names, you may explore my books developed through decades of study. 1. Why some names succeed and others failed. A study of why some names appear to support success while others repeatedly struggle. 2. Names that bind and break. An exploration of relationships, emotional compatibility, harmony, conflict, and separation through names. 3. Mastering name analysis. A complete guide for those who wish to study and professionally practice advanced name analysis. These books are available worldwide. If you wish to learn this system or obtain the books, you may contact me through WhatsApp, SMS, or email. WhatsApp/SMS +917 03411 4005. Please find the contact details in the description below. And if this analysis gave you a new perspective, do share your thoughts in the comments. Until the next exploration, take care and stay curious.